Before I was invited to introduce Yotam today, I had never heard of IsraAID. When they sent me the email asking me to speak today, there was a radio clip. I listened to the radio clip. I was intrigued. I went to the website and had a look at the many, many different projects that IsraAID is involved in, and I think Yotam will speak to that. I will not dwell on those things, although I was very impressed by the fact that IsraAID not only comes into these disaster and tragic situations and sets up short-term solutions. What impressed me was they also stay, sometimes for months and even years, I guess, to effect long-term and sustainable solutions, which was really, really impressive. And really, I have to say, all over. I mean, as their website will say, and I will quote it, that they have been on the front lines of every major humanitarian response in the 21st century. So it's really impressive. I can't do the website justice. I know Yotam will. So a little bit about Yotam. He has over 10 years of experience in education, humanitarian aid, and international development. He is currently serving as the Global Partnership Director and the Psychosocial Support Coordinator of IsraAID's aid and development projects in Asia and West Africa. I know that since September of this year, he's been leading a humanitarian mission in Greece to support the Syrian refugees, and I believe you're going to speak a little bit about that today. And so it really is with great pleasure, real interest, and a great deal of respect that I invite Yotam Polizer.
Thanks, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. It's really an absolute pleasure to be here, and thank you so much, all of you, for coming. Thank you, Marsha. Thank you, the Brodies. Thank you, everyone who helped this event. It would be helpful. Okay, sure. So thank you, everyone, for coming today. Thank you for the organizers. It's really a pleasure to be here. And one vote of confidence is that I had to cut yesterday an Harvard event to come to Ithaca. True story. First of all, speaking about disaster and responding to every disaster in the 21st century, I don't think we can ignore the last terrible terror attack in Paris. So I'm sure, together with all of you, our heart and prayers go to the people of France and Paris, Jews and non-Jews. And actually, just before this presentation, I got an email from one of our partner organizations in Paris, who is the head of the Association for Victims of Terror and Violence, who's asking me if we have some professionals, some Israeli professionals who could come help the French people cope with this terrible trauma, who affected not only the victims of the survivors, but the whole nation. So just as we speak right now, we're trying to organize a team that might go to Paris next week. A little bit about myself. I grew up in really one of the most beautiful places in Israel. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, visited. It's a very small village in the Galil called Harashim. It's just next to Tzfat. Beautiful place, sort of a bubble inside Israel, a little bit like Ithaca maybe. Very peaceful, wonderful people. All the big disaster that happened worldwide was faraway news. After the army, like every other Israelis, I went to India for 6 months. And when I was backpacking in India, I reached to Nepal. And in Nepal, I was struck by the number of street children in Kathmandu. So I decided to join a Jewish Israeli organization called Tevel B'Tzedek. It was actually established by a rabbi from LA, focusing on Tikkun Olam, and I started as a volunteer, and then I became the head of operations. I also joined the Israeli embassy, learned how to speak the Nepali language, which turned out to be very valuable in one of our missions now to support the victims of the earthquake in Nepal. But I want to start my story today actually from Japan. So this picture that you see here, me with these very cute Japanese children, was taken about a month after the terrible tsunami in March 2011. I don't know, I'm sure you all remember these unbelievable images, but let me just quickly flip through it so you'll see, you remember what we talk about. So this picture I actually took 4 days after the tsunami. In the tsunami in Japan, almost 20,000 people died. 500,000 people lost their houses. And on top of that, they had a nuclear disaster. So a lot of people couldn't go outside, the children could not play outside. Terrible, terrible tragedy. You know, Japan, a developed country, was really in shock. But when we came there, going back to the children, we saw that the children in the shelter, they had all their physical needs. They had food, they had shelter, they had clothes. What they didn't have is any type of emotional support. So we brought in our team two Israeli specialists who worked for years with victims of trauma in Sderot. And we did a very, very simple art therapy activity for the children. We took a big piece of paper, about the size from this wall to that wall, and about 50 children was sitting around it. And now, these are kindergarten age children, an elementary school, and in their kindergarten, 8 children died in the tsunami. Now the Japanese kids, as you know, Japanese people are very reserved. It's not easy for them to show out there. In a way, they're the opposite of Israelis. And so we did a very simple activity. We divided this piece of paper into 4 parts, and each part we gave a different title. The first title was Tsunami. The second title was Home. The third, Hope. And the fourth, Happiness. And we gave the children crayons, and we told them to just let it out, to just paint whatever they want in each part of the paper. Now when the children first saw the word tsunami, they immediately grabbed dark crayons and very dark colors and black and dark blue, and they completely erased the word, as if just seeing the word tsunami kind of triggered their trauma and gave them flashbacks. And then in the part where it says home, they painted their own houses, just as you've seen in the picture before, because that was their town. So, you know, most of these children, when the tsunami came, they were able to escape to a higher ground, and they actually seen this 35 meters tsunami coming and washing away everything. And when they were given the opportunity to draw it, they just draw whatever they see. In the part where it says hope, they painted their town, their community, before the disaster. It was as if their hope for the future was that, you know, things would go back to normal. And in the part where it says happiness, they painted ice cream, pizza, cherry blossom, you know, they have the Japanese comics characters, stuff that makes children all over the world happy. Now when we've seen the Japanese children reaction, we thought, you know, we know from Israel, from Sderot, we know this is a natural reaction to an abnormal situation. But when the Japanese teachers saw it, they were shocked. Because they said, it's the first time the children have actually expressed themselves regarding their trauma. They didn't talk about it before. And the Japanese teachers didn't think about, you know, the opportunity of letting them taking it out in a different way, in what we call now expressive therapy, which is so developed in Israel. So then these Japanese teachers came to us in a really non-Japanese way and asked us if they could learn these tools. And this is really when we started one of our major initiatives that is now operating in 17 countries around the world, which is to provide trauma care for children suffering from disasters. So what is IsraAID? We were founded in 2001, and one of our major principles, and I'll give you some case studies later, is that we really try to be first on the ground. So far we worked in 40 countries around the world, and at the moment we are operating in 17 countries. It means that as we speak, we have teams there on the ground. And you can divide our work into two. There is immediate emergency support, and there's long-term initiative. And for the emergency part, we're doing a lot of search and rescue. We did it with the Syrian refugees, we did it with Nepal after the earthquake. We're doing medical support, and we're providing relief aid. And then usually after 3 to 6 months, which is the typical emergency phase, and most organizations, like Red Cross, like Oxfam, like a lot of these organizations are usually leaving after the emergency phase. We stay and provide long-term support. And when I say long-term support, I mean we're not trying to give fish to the people, but teaching them how to fish. Or if I take it one step further, it's actually teaching them how they could create fish ponds and fishing nets, and they could really support themselves. And I'm coming from, maybe a secular family, but I just learned recently that this is the highest level of chesed. And it was really interesting learning experience for me. Some of the countries, for example, Haiti, it's been 6 years after the earthquake, but we still work there. In Japan now, it's been 4.5 years since the tsunami, and we're the only foreign NGO that's still working on the ground. And this is actually the group of Japanese teachers that was asked us to train them. And when we started work with the teachers, they are very Japanese professional teachers, they wanted to come for training. But when they came to our workshop, we realized that the teachers themselves need a lot of support. So we started to do these kind of games and therapy with them as well. But now let's go to the really hot topic, the refugee crisis. And that's our doctor, our Jewish Israeli doctor from Tel Aviv, Tali, carrying a Syrian baby who lost his mother in a shipwreck in Greece. And that picture was taken a month ago. At the moment in Lesbos in Greece, which is the closest island to the Turkey western border, there are between 5,000 to 7,000 refugees and migrants that are arriving every day. 5,000 to 7,000 every day. The total population of this island is 85,000 people. So only in the month of October there were almost 200,000 people going through Lesbos. And the first thing that these refugees seen when they reach Lesbos, when they reach Greece, are this Israeli team with this Star of David. Now, they probably think they took the wrong boat. But a lot of them, I have to say, so far, and I was just there a few weeks ago, we didn't see negative reaction. They were shocked, But these people, most of them, are really in some sort of identity crisis. Their government is killing them on one hand, the religious leaders are killing them on the other hand, and Israelis are saving them. It's a very confusing experience for them, and within this vacuum we try to get in. So some of the disaster where we work, this is the tsunami in Japan, this is me in the Philippines a week after the typhoon that hit in November 2013. This is one of my colleagues. I didn't tell you, I didn't share with you, but one of my hobbies is to actually go on empty planes. And what do I mean? I don't have the means, I don't have the money to go to hire my own jet. So every time there's a disaster, everyone's running away, I come in. So the Ebola was one of these cases, when the first Ebola patient arrived to the States and there was a huge world panic, that's when me and another colleague of mine went to Sierra Leone. And very interesting good news that I'm sure you didn't hear about because it's good news, is that as of last Sunday, a week ago, Sierra Leone was declared Ebola-free, which is unbelievable work, and we are proud to be part of this process together with the Sierra Leonean community. This is the Ebola, this is the earthquake in Nepal, really a village in the Himalaya, completely in rubble. This is actually from Hurricane Sandy. Now, why do the US, New York need Israel to support them? Good question. I'm not sure they do, but what we find out, and I'll talk about it later, is that even showing some kind of solidarity, sending a small rescue team to help in the relief efforts in the US, in Hurricane Katrina, in Hurricane Sandy. Just now we sent a team to South Carolina. It was very important in building bridges between Israel, Jewish communities, and the non-Jewish communities in the United States. So, what do we start from? As I said, we're starting from emergency. So the first important thing is saving lives. This picture is really interesting. This is a rubber boat of Syrian refugees arriving to Greece. And apart from Tali, our Jewish doctor, the person who's actually carrying the baby here is Majda, our nurse. And she's an Arab Israeli Christian from Nazareth who joined our team. And so I was telling you how confusing this experience is for the Syrian refugees. Now, they arrive, they see this big Magen David in Greece, they think they took the wrong boat, and then the people who's actually helping them are Jews, Israelis, but also Arabs. And the Arabs in North Israel speaks the same dialect as the Syrian. So they speak the same language with them, they are Israelis, they have this Magen David, and they're helping the Syrians. So right now in Greece today, we have a team on the ground of 8 people, and 5 of them are Israeli Arabs, Bedouin, Christian, Muslims, and Druze. This is Naama, our team leader in one of the rescue that we did in the water for a ship that collapsed. This is again Majda and Tali giving medical care for a Syrian baby suffering from hypothermia. And one of the things is that we all thought, together with the UN, that this wave of refugees, this unbelievable flow, will slow down after October. It's getting cold. Thought people will stay in the camps in Jordan, in Turkey, in Lebanon. But actually the opposite happened. And when we talked to the refugees, they told us that they feel it's like a race. They feel, and especially after what happened now in Paris, the border will probably get closed sooner or later. German government declared that they will take 800,000 refugees, and already more than 500,000 people came since January. And I was just in Berlin. It's overwhelming. The Germans, you think they're very organized, they have no idea what to do with the situation. And we're actually seeing a lot more cases of children and people suffering from hypothermia now, so we have about 20 to 30 cases. Now we're getting to Hanukkah soon, and I heard there are going to be some Hanukkah event, so I want to talk to you a little bit about miracles. This lady actually, her name is Krishna, she's from Nepal. And I was sharing with you, I used to live in Nepal, so when the earthquake happened in last April, I really almost felt like something bad happened in Israel. You have this feeling that your heart goes out, and you can't stay, you have to do something. So immediately I was actually in Japan, and I came to Nepal. After I came, there was some problem with the airport, and our rescue team of 15 people from Israel couldn't come until the 4th day. Now we all know that, when you talk about rescue, the first 72 hours are the most critical. The chances of actually finding survivors after 72 hours is close to 0. But we were looking to see, and I went in the worst slum in Kathmandu that was completely wiped out by the earthquake. And I talked to the local community, and we found out one building where 22 people were supposedly buried under the rubble. 22 people. So we decided to start digging out, and we were starting to dig out a lot of dead bodies. Children, elders, and one by one we pulled them out, and we reached the 23rd person. But we couldn't find the 22nd person. The 4th day passed, the 5th day passed, and the beginning of the 6th day, almost 130 hours after the earthquake, 130 hours, we used a special life detector that was developed in Israel, which is basically a very sensitive mic that you put inside the rubble as deep as possible, and using a massive headphones you can possibly recognize human breath. And our commander, the commander of the rescue team, Eran Magen, who worked in these type of disaster areas for ages, he sensed something that he said that about 30% that this is a human breath. And he asked me if I could crawl inside where they were digging and scream in Nepali language if there is anybody in there. He said there might be a reaction. For me, it sounds very weird and very scary because you have to crawl inside this tunnel, and if I move my hand in the wrong direction, the whole thing could collapse not only on me but also the other rescue teams and potentially the survivor. So I was crawling inside, about 15 meters into the rubble, and when I reached the deepest point, I screamed something that sounds like Yaha Koko Hununcha, which means, is there anybody in there? And an unbelievable miracle down from the deep. There was a voice of lady saying in Nepali language, Dukcha. Dukcha means I'm in pain. And unbelievably, not only she survived, she was able to make a sound. And she was able to explain to me, and then I explained to the rescue team how to reach her, grab her, and pull her out. And that's her 2 months ago, after she recovered completely in the Israeli field hospital in Kathmandu, and she's now safe with her 2 children in the village. Another miracle, this is Iris, our doctor, and she's holding a Syrian baby. And the story is that a 9-month pregnant Syrian lady arrived to the beach in Lesbos in Greece, and her water broke as soon as she reached the island, on the beach. And Iris, our doctor and one of our nurses, helped deliver the baby, and Baruch Hashem is healthy. And that's him in a hospital in Greece after recovery. Marsha was sharing with you about the story of the guy who was treated twice by Israelis. So that's him, Abdallah, and he was not surprised at all. Unlike all the other people who was treated, was shocked to see. I said, no, it's not the first time. And the story was that he was joining the rebels, and in the Golan Heights, after being injured, he was picked up by the IDF, evacuated to Rambam Hospital in Haifa, and got treatment, and then was released and went to Jordan to a refugee camp. And just a month ago, he decided he wants to move to Germany and apply for refugee status. But then he got injured trying to, when he reached the beach in Lesbos in Greece, and then received treatment. He's now our friend on Facebook, and he's a big supporter. This is some of the food we distribute. Marsha mentioned before, this is in Kurdistan, actually in Iraq, and the Kurds, they love Israel. They have no problem with Israel whatsoever. From their perspective, it's very natural to receive support from Israel. But because we work in Erbil, which is 60 kilometers from the Islamic State conquered area, we cannot obviously use the Magen David and our logo and speak out loud about our Israeli identity. This is a model designed by an Israeli architect together with a Nepali engineer after the earthquake, and we built 1,200 of these houses. It takes about 6 hours. Now we train the local team, 6 hours to build it, not the whole thing with the bricks, but to build a kind of igloo part of it. And it's really interesting because we designed a model that cost only $150 to build. And a lot of the people in the villages, I don't know if any of you visited Nepal, it's a beautiful country, they were so much happy. They said it's better than what they had before the earthquake. And definitely more safe. This is another emergency program, a beautiful initiative started by free mothers in Israel. they've seen the pictures of the mothers, the Syrian mothers, going and carrying their baby all the way from Greece to Germany with nothing. And they decided to collect these baby carriers, these baby slings. You know, their children are already grown up, they don't need these carriers, so they opened a Facebook group called Slings for Refugees, you can all look it up, and they started to collect it. And only in Israel, in 1 week, they collected 750 of these slings, and they sent it to us in Greece. And then it became very viral, and a lot of mothers from all over Europe, from Sweden, from UK, from Germany, from Holland, they all started to collect, and so far we collected 3,500 of these slings. And the Syrian mothers, the refugees, this is really what they appreciate the most. Now let's move to the long term. So after the emergency period, and some of these emergencies, you know, it's an ongoing trauma. When we talk about the refugees, it's not like the tsunami. Tsunami is one thing, it's over, and then you work on post-disaster, and you start the recovery process. The Ebola outbreak, or the refugee crisis, it's an ongoing, so we have to continue the emergency program, but also look into the long term. And when we're talking about long term, you know, our guiding principle is that, first of all, it's long term. And a minimum program for us is 2 years. We don't believe in any type of this work that's less than 2 years. And it's very challenging because, you know, when the media is there, fundraising is easier, but when the media is gone, funding is very difficult. So what we're trying to do, whenever there's a disaster, we're trying to fundraise enough to sustain our program for a few years. We're doing a lot of what we call training of trainers. So as I said, not giving people fish, but teaching them how to fish. We work with ministries, governments, if there are functional governments. We're working with academia, NGO. We try to bring an Israeli and Jewish know-how. So really trying to look what is our added value. And most of the programs that we're doing, whether it's agriculture or trauma care, is really based on models that developed in Israel. And we have right now a team of 135 international specialists. Now most of these specialists, they have their own jobs. They could work in hospitals, they could work in universities, and they join us 2 or 3 times a year. And this is some of the programs. So this is actually a program that we did for Syrian children who lost their parents in the war and shipwrecks. And we did also art therapy, and I want to share with you one of these drawings that made by an 8-year-old Syrian girl. So, of course, as I said, we didn't ask her to paint her journey, her trauma, or whatever. We just gave her crayons and paper, and she was drawing her family going from Turkey here, getting on the boat. Some people drowned on the way, reaching the other side where our medical and rescue team was there. And this was actually even more graphic. This was painted by Muhammad, 15 years old, from Syria. And on the left side, he was describing and painting ISIS beheading part of his family. And then he escaped from here to Homs, to another city where the Assad regime was actually throwing rockets from the sky. So only him and his uncle survived when they escaped to Greece. And before that, our psychologist asked him, so Muhammad, when, you know, you didn't have a place to stay, so what did you do? He said, I was just running in between these 2 areas. So we can, you know, imagine what layers and levels of trauma these children have to go through. This is the activities that I was telling you about in Japan. This is the area where it says tsunami, where they painted very dramatically. This is the area where they says home. Again, the children enjoy, they're playing. But if you look at what they're drawing and what they're playing, you can understand the depth of what they had to go through. This very cute Japanese girl lost her mother in the tsunami. And she didn't speak. She was functional, she ate, she drank, but she hardly spoke to anyone for almost 2 months after the tsunami. And then we did some music therapy activity with the children. And I can play guitar, not professionally. I can play a few chords. And this girl, she really liked the guitar. not me. And then I invited her to play with me, and I told her I made as if my right hand was, painful, so I asked her if she could play with me. So I was holding the guitar with my left hand, and she was playing the right hand. And I saw that she's really getting into it. So I asked her through an interpreter, and now I can speak Japanese, but at that point I couldn't speak a word. I asked her if she could teach me a Japanese children's song. So she started to teach me, and of course I tried to imitate her, but I made a lot of stupid mistakes. So she started to make fun of me and to laugh, and then her teacher also joined us and started to play with us, and then I sort of let the teacher take over, and slowly she was able to communicate again. This is an interesting program for the Ebola. And again, we all heard that Ebola is killing everyone, but actually there were a lot of survivors. About 50% of the people survived. But the biggest problem with the Ebola survivors was that they were so stigmatized. The communities didn't want to accept them back. So we decided to do a support group for the Ebola survivors. Now, why this picture is so unique is because, first, this is a Muslim lady, Fatmata from Sierra Leone, who never seen an Israeli person in her life, and also thought that we are monsters. So that was nice for her to see that we're not monsters. And the other thing that's really interesting is that in the Ebola outbreak, when I was for 6 months in Sierra Leone, in every place of the country you see these signs saying A, B, C, avoid body contact. But for the Ebola survivors, it was proven, there's a lot of research, that they're actually immune. So they were able to touch each other, and they're a little bit like Israelis, they like hugging. And it was a very empowering experience for them to play different games where they were actually allowed to touch each other, and very, very empowering experience. This is from Nepal. And when I used to live in Nepal, I did a lot of theater and drama with street children. And Nepal, especially in the Himalaya, still 70% of the villages are not connected to internet, not connected to road, there's no TV. So theater is the main way to deliver any kind of message, social message, political message, education, anything. So together we took a group of Nepali actors, and they sat with our child psychologist, and they designed a play that speaks about how children behave after trauma. And it was unbelievable response from the people. There were people from all over these villages that was wiped out. They all came to see this play, and in the course of 3 months, 25,000 people came to see. And what's even more interesting is that after this play, a lot of these Nepali mothers and teachers, they started to share how their children were behaving after the trauma. So it was very culturally oriented intervention that we somehow was able to design. Complete different intervention is our team together with an app company from Silicon Valley called Journey Apps. We designed a special phone application, mobile application, to measure the levels of stress among health workers in the Ebola. Now, why was that so important? In one hospital, for instance, in Sierra Leone, and I'm sure you all heard about the fact that a lot of the health workers themselves in the early stages got infected. So in one hospital, 35 doctors and nurses died of Ebola. All the other doctors and nurses were just terrified. They didn't want to go to work. They were so stressed. And we all know that people who are stressful are more likely to make critical mistakes in their medical work. So measuring their level of stress and seeing that if they're too stressed, they need to go on vacation or they need some stress relief activities was very important, and we designed a special app for that that's still being used. This is from the Philippines. This is a long-term training program that we did for teachers. This is again the Ebola. This is actually a very interesting program that we're doing for North Korean refugees, people who escaped from the labor camps in North Korea. For me, it's one of the, it's a very small program because unfortunately it's very hard to fundraise for this program. But for me, as a grandson of Holocaust survivor from Hungary, when I heard the stories of the North Korean refugees about the labor camps in North Korea, I couldn't help but thinking about what my grandparents went through, and I feel it's like a very strong Jewish responsibility for us to support these people. And this is again in the Ebola. Now I want to get into why, how this work, how our work, I feel like helping Israel, and why I think it's important. So this is one of our main friends, and maybe if you didn't recognize him now you can. Sean Penn, the Oscar winner, and he is working in Haiti. He has his own charity. He's been working there for 6 years, and from the very first day after the earthquake, he became our main partner. He really recognized our support, and together with him we operated a field hospital and opened a trauma care clinic. And the really exciting news is that on November 30th, this month, he is coming to Israel for the first time in his life to be the keynote speaker in a conference that we're organizing about Haiti. So, and I'm supposed to babysit him, so you have to wish me good luck. I'm not sure. I think it's going to be a real disaster. But what's interesting is that people are wondering why do we have to do a conference with him about Haiti in Israel? It doesn't make sense. Why don't we do it in Haiti or somewhere in the States where it's close by? And he said very clearly that he wants to come to Israel because you know better than me that coming to Israel in these days is a very strong statement. Another friend, the Pope, my buddy, my drinking buddy, he received from one of our board members a handcraft that was made by our women group in Haiti. The lady in the middle, the wonderful lady, her name is Sia Koroma, and she is the First Lady of Sierra Leone, the wife of the president. And when I met her, it was beginning of October 2014. So really the peak of Ebola, and she was so moved. She said, how come a country like Israel, small country, you have so much of your own problems going on, and you're sending a team to help the Ebola when everyone is basically running away? So she told me that the first country she's going to visit after Sierra Leone will be declared Ebola free is Israel. And the good news is that just 2 days ago I got an email from her assistant that she's planning to come next month. Prince William, he came to visit Japan, the Fukushima affected area, and he met with a lot of the teachers and the children. And they told him about our activities with them, so he asked to hear from me about the work. So I had a really nice chat with him about it. The person here, his name is Matthew, is the Chief of Child Protection for UNICEF. Again, not our typical friends, the UN. And he was so impressed and he was so excited about the type of program that we offered to support doctors and nurses in the Ebola outbreak that he told me that UNICEF is going to fund us. So UNICEF right now, they provide funding for 3 of our programs in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and in South Sudan. And Matthew is a very close friend, and he said, I don't care if they tell me something in the headquarters in Geneva or in New York, we're going to fund you. But then moving forward, I really believe that these terrible, terrible disasters are also a unique opportunity. In psychology, we call it PTG, post-traumatic growth. We all know about PTG, post-traumatic growth. I mean, it's a term in psychology that resembles the potential for growth after disasters. I think Israel is an amazing example, growing from the Holocaust and becoming a nation. There's a lot of cases of individual post-traumatic growth. A lot of the victims of rape are becoming supporters. Now, it doesn't mean that the trauma or the tragedy was good. But it's also a unique opportunity. And we've seen this in our work many times. And especially now with the Syrian refugees, this terrible, terrible tragedy and trauma of the war in Syria is also, we feel, an amazing opportunity to build new bridges. And we see it on the beach in Greece, where we were. And this, for example, our social worker, Bedouin, Warda, on the right side, hugging a Syrian mother who lost her son in a shipwreck. And the reason they're smiling is because you can see they're organizing salads, which was for the celebration of Eid al-Adha. Right after Yom Kippur, the most important Muslim festival in the year, was organized and funded by us for the Syrian refugees in Greece. This lady here, lying down, she received CPR from our nurse, and of course she woke up, she was in shock to see Israelis. But then after this shock, she told us that her father was actually a Palestinian refugee who escaped from Israel after the 1948 war to Damascus. And then he passed away, and then she escaped from Damascus to Greece, and then in Greece, her life was saved by Israelis. So again, very confusing, but an amazing opportunity to build trust, to build bridges between people. Another different types of bridge, as I was telling you, is our work with the Jewish communities here in the States. And it's not only our work in disasters in the States, but also, you know better than me that a lot of the young, but not only young Jewish people, they feel less connected to Israel for different reasons. Now, I'm not here to judge these people, but what I want to offer is an alternative. What I want to offer is a bridge for them to reconnect. And we feel, and I'm talking in campuses, I was just in Stanford, in Harvard, in Brandeis, and I meet very bright young Jewish professionals that feel like this humanitarian work is actually a great way for them to reconnect, which is really important for us. So this is a Jewish community from New Jersey. This is a community from Oklahoma. This is actually a whole different story about a Japanese guy from the tsunami area who joined our program in Japan. His name is Soru, and after being supported by Israel, he wanted to join IsraAID and our team when we went to Nepal. So that's him in Nepal, from Japan, him in Nepal, helping building shelters as part of an Israeli NGO. Very interesting. And before I conclude, I would like to finish with a quote from a Syrian doctor. Now, I had no idea before I went to Greece, but when I met a lot of the Syrian refugees, a lot of them were very highly educated, doctors, engineers. And this guy actually spoke fluent English. And after the first shock of being saved by Israelis, he told me, my worst enemy became my biggest supporter. And the people who were supposed to protect me back home are now chasing me away. And it really made me realize what among this terrible tragedy, and especially after what happened now in Paris, what an amazing opportunity we have now to build bridges. And especially in Greece, where we're seeing 5,000 to 7,000 of these refugees every day, so we're seeing a lot of people. And even if we were able to change one person, it's great, but I feel like we're able to change much more. And bringing together these Arab Israelis who then go back to Israel, and maybe they feel more connected to the Israeli society, and especially now, after all these terrible stabbing incidents, I feel like it's more important than ever. Thank you very much. I don't know how many of you speak Hebrew, but I'm ממש מתרגש. I'm really moved. Thank you so much. I don't know, I'm giving a lot of this presentation, but I could really feel you. And I mean, it's not my job, I'm not a spokesperson or anything, but I could really feel the vibe from you, so thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here. And if you have, I have some final message for you, but maybe before that, if you have questions or comments or ideas, I would love to hear.
So, a number of your examples, you mentioned people on your team that were there to help. You mentioned numbers. The numbers were all less than 10. So is it like, 5 people running around the world doing this? How big and how?
Okay, thank you. So we work in 17 countries as we speak, and in each of these countries we have a team that's based there. So this team that's based there permanently is usually a team leader, an assistant, and some local staff. So we have as paid staff today about 120 people all over the world in 17 countries. And then on top of that we have these 135 professionals who are people who have their jobs, but they're coming twice or 3 times a year to provide some of these trainings and support, so medical doctors. And then on top of that, we have some non-professional volunteers, so some of the people from the Jewish community, some of the people who collect these links for refugees, and the number is around 2,200 people who are in our network. But one of the things that we want to do here in the States now is build our network. So we want to recruit more people to become staff. We want to recruit more people to become volunteers, both in the States and in Israel and all over the world. And in Boston, for instance, we had 2 very successful meetings with a lot of psychologists who would hopefully join our program. So we really want to bring much more people on board, and there's definitely a need.
What type of time commitment are people making when they join you?
Very good practical question. So usually if people are coming and joining us on a mission, the minimum we require is 10 days. Really the minimum of the minimum. Ideally it's 2 to 3 weeks, but of course it's difficult for people to take time off, and we want to get really professionals joining. So the minimum is 10 days, and we hope that the people who is taking time off will be a long-term supporters and long-term volunteers or consultants, so they will join more than one time, because when you go to these parts of the world, it takes a few days just to adjust and just to understand the chaotic atmosphere. So we're giving orientation before going, and when they arrive, our team on the ground actually help with all the logistics, so we're not just random people coming. There's some sort of plan. But yeah, 10 days is really, really the minimum. Yeah.
I have another question. I have heard on the news that Israel is going with Met people to help. Sometimes the countries don't let you in, but I never heard the name.
That's our fault. And I can complain for ages about the media miscoverage. I was just actually showing the students in Ithaca College that last week we were covered in CNN. But even in CNN, they showed our doctor with the logo, but they say Israeli. I mean, it's good they say Israeli. Sometimes they don't even say Israeli. But you're right. You have to differentiate. We're a civil society group. We're an NGO, and the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, they are going in many of these disasters. For example, in Haiti, we went together. They operated a field hospital, and then they left after 2 weeks because they have their stuff to do, and we took over. So we work very closely with them, but it's a separate group. But you're right. I mean, we don't have at the moment, to be very honest, we don't have a spokesperson. We don't have even a social media person, which is so, basic for any kind of public relation work. We don't. And we wish we don't get any financial support from the Israeli government. They support our work. We're in close contact with all the embassies. Michael Oren, for example, the former Israeli ambassador, was just joining our team in Nepal. He came with his wife, Sally, who is our ambassador. But unfortunately, the Israeli government don't give support. It's not because they don't like what we do. It's because generally the humanitarian support, the development budget in the Israeli government is really close to zero, unfortunately. Any other questions?
So the name goes out if you got T-shirts, though, right?
Yeah. So in many, especially now with the refugees, if you, there's so many stories that was covered, and everyone's seen our logo, and so people know, but not enough.
You've been to colleges, just one here, you were saying you were at Harvard. Are there programs that can recruit very specifically college students that you have in place right now?
Yeah, so
post-college, I mean, some graduates.
exactly, a lot of them are very interested. So that's one of the reasons that I'm here now, to spread the word. And there are two types of or three types of potential involvement. One is professionals, people who already graduate from specific field, and there are quite wide range of fields, because as I was sharing with you, it's not only medical and psychology or education, it's also agriculture, water technology, engineers, architects, and some of the tech people, because we want to develop these apps and technological solutions. The non-professional people are still studying, or people who want to take gap year, or people who want to come for internship, they usually contact us individually, and we try to tailor something for them. Our office is in Tel Aviv University, where right now we have, I think, 5 American Jewish interns with us, and we always look for more, because we need people who could, spread the word, help us with everything that has to do from PR to fundraising to getting involved. And we also offer for even younger people, for example, the Jewish community in Hong Kong, the high school students were really interested in getting involved, so we organized a trip for them, a package trip, volunteering trip, that they raised the funding for to the Philippines after the typhoon. So that's also a possibility. I was giving a lot of talks in LA, in Jewish high school, and a lot of the high school students want to get involved, and I know they're now organizing a team to come in the summer. So there are a lot of number of opportunities. We're very flexible, but we welcome any new initiatives from individuals and communities. And the way to do it is through our website or Facebook page. Just contact us and tell us we want to volunteer, we are available for this time, this is our skill, this is the area of the world that we're interested in, and we get the ball rolling. Yes?
What does your organization need the most?
A very Jewish answer. I think it's hard to say the most. We need funding, and even if I said funding, most of our funding goes to operation. If we now registered our NGO in the States. We have a very small office in DC and board members. It just started. We really need to build our network here, and it could be through funding that we could hire the people to do it, or it could be through people who donate their time and skills to do it. I really feel like we're not reaching even 10% of our potential. I really feel like, especially with the Jewish community, where there's so many divisions and different opinions. I just got an email from Columbia University. I'm going to speak there tomorrow, and there's about 120 people registered. And they told me that the thing that was so amazing for them is that IsraAID was the first group that was able to bring all the groups, the Jewish groups in campus together. So they're bringing the pro-Israel group on one hand, and J Street on the other hand, and Chabad on the other hand, and the Reform on the other hand. So I really feel like we have a really unique potential to build these bridges, but we need so much help. We don't even have a clear presence, a staff member in the States, a paid staff in the States right now, because all the limited funding that we did get was only operational. So it's a challenge.
After Columbia, where does your itinerary carry you?
I'm going, so I started in LA, I went to Stanford, San Francisco, then Boston, Ithaca, New York, Cleveland, and finishing in Seattle, this tour, and then Sean Penn after Thanksgiving. And then who knows, probably back to Europe to the refugee crisis. So yeah, quite a tight schedule. But I have to say, the young people in the audience and the young at heart, it's very addictive. So I saw the students at Ithaca College today. I saw they're like, I saw how many of them were like planning on their future career. I need to tell the parents to be careful. It's very addictive, and I mean, I love traveling, and I love to do this type of work, and if I even have the opportunity to do it through a Jewish and Israeli program, that's, you know, a win-win-win. So be careful. Any other questions, ideas? Yeah.
It seems like a lot of the focus is on the women and children. Are you also working with the men?
You're right. It is a lot of the focus, and a lot of the people now here in the States told me, how can you help refugees? There might be ISIS people. And I tell them we work mostly with women and children, and also that, you know, at the end of the day, a lot of the terrorists who will want to come, they will come with the refugees or without. Getting a fake passport is a $500 thing. We do work with the men also, and especially, for example, in South Sudan, it's a newly established country. It's only 4 years old, and it's a Christian country, but because of the civil war, there is so much violence against women, and there's a real need for gender-based violence. So we train the local police and social workers, and we're doing a lot of awareness campaigns, because rape is such a common practice there. It's really unbelievable. And there was no law, and there was no prevention, and there was no treatment. So we try to provide treatment for the victims, but if you really want to stop these terrible phenomena, you have to work with the men. So yeah, in those countries, for instance, we do it in Nepal. When we do agriculture, it's both women and men. We try to work with the most vulnerable communities, but as I said, we really try to find long-term solutions, so you have to include the men in that. Yeah.
I presume that most of the refugees, you mentioned a lot of the refugees that are coming are professional people. How much are you able to get them back involved to provide their own professional help for their communities?
It's a great question, because one of the countries that we're starting to work probably on January is Germany. And you think, why Germany need the support of us? But they're taking 800,000 people, and they're completely overwhelmed. And I met with the German Minister of Health in Berlin, and he really wants the Israelis to support, because he feel like not only that they never had dealt with refugees for 70 years since the war, and also they don't have this Arabic-speaking specialist. So he wants us to help them cope with the trauma, and also looking at models developed in Israel in integrating migrants, in integrating Olim Chadashim, and bringing them back to work. It's still an early stage, and we haven't done it so far, because we were really focusing on the humanitarian area, but through the next year, the integration process of all these refugees, mostly in Germany and in the western part of Europe, is something that we're planning to support, and to really look at the models developed in Israel for that. Some of them are better than the others. You know, we have to also be self-criticized. We still have a lot of problems in Israel with integrating migrants, but we also did some good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I love this. What I'm kind of curious about is, so with little budget, are you able to access email lists of most Jews on campus anyway?
Am I able to access which email?
Email lists of Jews on campus anywhere. Meaning, have you reached out just to Hillels, just to J Street affiliates, just to Chabad, their leaders, to actually build mailing lists?
No, and we wish that anyone will be able to help us. It's a good comment. I mean, this tour here was finally organized after many different groups. Hillel also, and some J Street and some other contacted us for some time and asked for event here or event there, and then we sort of put it together, and then Marsha, lucky for us, contacted us, and somehow it worked itself. But But that's what we're really hoping to build now, this emails list, and these people who could help us share all the information in the email list, both so we could recruit people, so we could fundraise, and so we could spread the word, which is really the most important thing. So thank you for this comment, and any support with this will be highly appreciated. I didn't put the last slide, but this is what it said.